Hey gamers, this is Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire, and I'm here with Mitch Reed from No Dice, No Glory.
What's up, Liz?
I'm doing great because we are here today to introduce Alison Collins. She's a finalist for the Zenobia Award and the designer of Wiñay Kawsay. How are you doing, Alison?
I'm really good, thanks. It's lovely to meet you both.
It's great to meet you too. So why don't we just start with the obvious? Tell us about your game.
Okay, so Wiñay Kawsay is a 2 to 4 player Euro style game all about understanding interpretations of Machu Picchu. So it's almost a history of the history making of Machu Picchu rather than a history of the place itself. So it's exploring the multiple different historical interpretations of the site and what it was over time. And also it's a look into the role of historians in shaping historical narrative and constructing history, sometimes by not so sound practice or not necessarily with the history at heart.
So what got you interested in this particular topic?
So it was a bit strange. I had a university assignment for a course all about the role of the city in history. And immediately the assignment said, pick a city and explore an aspect of it. And I'm like, yeah, I want to do Machu Picchu, the lost city of the Inca, for my assignment. And I started researching it, and I was very upset to find that it probably wasn't a lost city. And then it really got me thinking, oh, wait, but why does everyone know that Machu Picchu is the lost city of the Inca? What led to that being the case? And I started to do some investigation into the historical opinion of what Machu Picchu was, and found just a minefield of, Machu Picchu was lost city of the Inca, Machu Picchu was a royal estate, Machu Picchu was a religious site, a citadel of some sort, lots of different interpretations that over time historians had, some had said this and some had said that, and fighting each other and reinterpreting evidence, and a whole train of malpractice and misinterpretation as well. And then when I had another history assignment at university, they said you could make anything, and I made a prototype for Wiñay Kawsay, the board game. But so yeah, that was really what that's how I got interested in the topic. And then the Zenobia Award came up, and I entered my very, very different prototype in that, and it got completely sort of, the original one got thrown out the window. And through the process of the last few months, been making a game that's much better than that original one that I submitted for the history assignment.
So I guess you were a history major.
I did a double degree, a bit of a weird one. I did history and then I did IT as well.
Nice. That's a rare combination.
Yeah, it's surprisingly rare, but the two actually go quite well together.
Yeah. What was the hardest thing about doing research and building mechanics to this game?
So the biggest, the research, thankfully, I'd done most of it for the assignment itself. So I had this great base of research before entering the Zenobia Award to build off, and a lot of the cards in which the evidence is sort of the basis of the cards of the game. So this piece of evidence suggests that Machu Picchu was these particular interpretations. So that was thankfully all done before the contest. But the hardest part was understanding the history and then looking at that malpractice and the misinterpretation and converting that to game mechanics. So I didn't want a game that the players were forced to sort of perform the missteps and the malpractice, and that was the original version of the game. It was all about performing malpractice. And the more I thought about that, I thought, oh, this is pretty bad. You don't want the players to be making those mistakes. You want them to have the option to actually do things well and be historically rigorous, rather than it just be a case study in failing. So balancing that history of things done badly with the option for players to pick their own route to exploring the history, being more interpretive than literally just following the uncovering as it happened, and fitting that within a fun game mechanic that held together regardless of your approach. So the game itself does still let you conduct malpractice, but that had to be sort of competitively balanced with following it, doing it a more rigorous way. And there were a lot of changes to the game around, there used to be a conspiracy theory mechanic in the game where conspiracy theories could be published to discredit evidence, which is something that's obviously done in the broader historical space, and that does inform interpretation of a lot of historical sites or conspiracy theories. But a lot of feedback I received was, fostering conspiracy theories is such a strong mechanic of the game. probably not a great approach to go with presenting that on equal footing with a genuine publication. And so a lot of revising to still keep the fun and the interest and the intrigue there, but putting its best foot forwards ideally rather than the malpractice.
Well, conspiracy theories, we have a bunch of them now. So it's kind of a fitting, in my opinion, would be a real fitting mechanic, but may not be great for a game.
So I have a mechanical question. So in a game, how do you reward doing the right thing historically and kind of disincentivize doing the wrong one? Or does this game do that? I mean, I'm actually a historian myself, and I wonder about that because sometimes it seems like it'd be so easy to just make something up.
Yeah. And I think the interesting thing here is that the victory point currency of the game is influence.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a very deliberate decision that the best way to gain influence in the game from me playing it a few times is to do the right thing. You're more likely to rack up the points really easily if you're building those interpretations, you're publishing, you're advancing your academic tenure in the game. So doing things the right way does help that. However, there are little opportunities you can engage in to sabotage other people. Historical events come up, and it's the cornerstone of that mechanic is that you can sabotage those events if you feel it's not in your best interest to help out the broader historical community. And also in terms of the options for you to develop yourself as a historian, there's sort of two more academically sound routes you can pick, and there's one pathway, the popularizer pathway, which sort of is for the historian that maybe values themselves and their own charisma more than necessarily what they're saying, based off a key historical figure in the Machu Picchu case study. And that's a risky route to go. Like, you could win the game very convincingly if you play your cards right on that one, but it's a risk to take. It's definitely not the most straightforward pathway of the three in the game. So I think it's balancing risk reward in terms of how far are players willing to go to conduct that malpractice, how committed are they, and the fact that through the other players in the game that really sabotaging the other players and almost having this historical community turn on the players who aren't as historically rigorous as the rest, and having that social dynamic in the game, but also making it more risky in a competitive sense.
Nice. So I have one more kind of history nerd question, and I think about this. So my own research. So I studied Egyptian monasticism for my dissertation, and I always think about I'm a classicist, not a Latin teacher. So we think about things like Britain having the Elgin marbles, and like a lot of historians study cultures that aren't necessarily theirs and then publish about it. You are Australian. You got interested in Machu Picchu. You made a game about historians studying Machu Picchu. How did you account for kind of the extra layer of cultural challenges of historians studying somebody else's culture and maybe doing that from a colonial perspective?
Yeah, and it's such a hard one. And I think it's exemplified that a lot of historical games are presenting the history as it was. Quotation marks, and trying to represent that almost as a simulation of the history. This one's doubly hard because it's the history of the history making process. So it's understanding not only how that history was made, but the flaws of the history process being made, and then what is represented on top of that. Right. To account for that as well, this particular history is very interpretive, and there's no, though there's a genuine perceived sort of consensus broadly in what Machu Picchu was, it's still being heavily debated, and people still have different opinions coming in and interpreting different evidence. So for me, I think I just tried to make the game less of a simulation, try and make it more explorative. So here is the evidence that has been found of the site. Have a look at this evidence, and what do you personally see in it? I think in terms of understanding the culture itself, that's something that beyond the Zenobia Award and taking this game forward, I definitely want to do more. And it's something that I've been trying my whole process along to sort of check myself, check any sort of biases I have coming in, go back to the research. And then moving forward, it's something I'd really like to do in terms of getting a cultural consultation on before the publication, talking to some people, making sure, is my understanding correct? Have I missed anything? I think that's an emerging practice that very necessarily has to happen, and something I really want to do to make sure I'm on the right track. Like I'm trusting my historical background from university, right, that I am doing this rigorously and I am doing this properly, but getting a cultural advisor on would be it is the way to go with any of these historical games. And it's something that I think wasn't necessarily in the scope of the contest, given how tight the time has been to develop the game. But moving forward, hopefully towards publication, that's a number one priority for me. There are a few key historians in particular that have completely informed the game, and their research has been a cornerstone to understanding the artifacts. I'd love to talk to them. I'd love to talk to any particular cultural advisors in the space, especially looking at the religious history of the site. That's where I'd love to meet a few people and talk to them. Just the contest was quite tight in terms of its time spans, and that, considering I had to rebuild the game from basically scratch in February, getting this base prototype that we've all had to submit for the finals has really been my number one priority. Having something good enough that someone can come in and help me with it, rather than just, oh, here's this thing I cobbled together. Please help me.
And that leads me to a two-part question here. Is this your first foray in game design? And whether yes or no, what do you think of the Zenobia process?
So to the first question, yes, this is my first foray in game design. I almost don't count that first prototype I submitted of this one game, but given that was for a history assignment, and I didn't really trust my professors would understand complex mechanics. And that was more about presenting the history rather than designing a game itself. So there was that, and that was trash, if I'm being honest. So starting that from scratch and rebuilding a game, this is really the first game I've developed. And my experience with the Zenobia Award process, I can only speak for myself, but I've just had the best time with this opportunity. I got the most wonderful mentoring team in Marie Suckling and Dan Burt to help me and to advise me. And I'm at a stage now, we've done so many meetings over the course of the last few months and chatted so much, and they've really helped me understand game design better and helped me improve the game and continue to iterate. I've met some really wonderful, I've met all the finalists and a few of the other contestants, and they're so lovely and their games are incredible. And just meeting this broader network of incredible people, chatting to Volko regularly and meeting some really other wonderful people in the contest. It's just been incredible. For someone with no game design real background, but wanting to learn and wanting to explore historical games more, to be able to really jump into this space, meet people, develop ideas, and improve something that I'm now super passionate about. It's just, for me, it's been the best. I can only speak for myself, but this opportunity has been, it's no hyperbole to say it's been life-changing for me, this process.
So you're going to do another game eventually, right?
I hope so.
Positive? Yeah.
I hope so. And then I've actually been able to, I believe my work on Wiñay Kawsay helped this. I've been wanting to move into game design more broadly, been applying for jobs, and very recently I actually got a job in the games industry, and I'm pretty sure that my experiences in the Zenobia Award shaped me getting that job as a graduate game designer.
So what was the what do you think was the most difficult part of going from having an initial vision of your game and then getting to the Zenobia version of your game?
Yeah, so I think this was a really hard one, because I was weirdly proud. Back in February, I was a completely different person, turns out. And I was proud of that trash product I had. And then to sit down with my mentor in one of the first sessions and him very gently leading me towards this whole thing should be revised. If you want to if you want to use this opportunity to develop and grow as a designer, and if you want to stand a chance in this competition, it needs to be started from scratch. That was quite a hard thing, but I was pretty lucky, and I've always been relatively good at coming up with ideas. And it just so happened that I'd been given for Christmas by my partner a model of Machu Picchu, because I'm very interested and I love it. And I just happened to be thinking, how can I change the game? How can I change the game? I saw the model and it just weirdly clicked, that sort of, a model. And this idea of, having this physical side of Machu Picchu, and then historians deconstructing it and rebuilding it with their own mental model and the mental model that's in the public, it just sort of weirdly, like one of those real sort of shower thoughts. I entered the shower with no idea. I left the shower. Oh, this is going to be the core of the game. Can recommend showers for game design. So I think that really, thankfully, that pivot happened quite quickly. And then from there, it's thinking about, well, what are the other historical aspects that are key to this historical model, of understanding this particular case study? Is it focusing on the malpractice? Is it focusing on this idea of reinterpretation? Is it focusing on this idea of history as an evolving understanding? And it was, for me, I wanted to hopefully touch on all three of these ideas, and trying to make particular systems work together to very nicely hold all that together. And that was like the whole Zenobia process, getting to a point where I felt that all those different systems embodied that historical model. And I think that's probably been the overarching challenge for me, especially with this model that is a little bit off the beaten track and a bit different to typical historical games. When the historical model is sort of much more meta in some ways of how do we understand history, making those systems hold together, make sense, still be fun, but fit within the history I'm trying to present, that's been the challenge for me. And it's really been something that at every point I've created a prototype and it's been like, oh, this is great. I think I've got it now. Do a play test. Oh, I very clearly don't have it yet. Iterate. Present it in front of the play test. Oh, I think this could be it. And it's not. It's not. And I think it's going to continue to, I'm happy with where it's at right now, but, ask me in a few months' time and I'll think, oh, why are you so naive?
You bring up an amazing point. And even before Zenobia, I've worked with so many game designers. I never had box envy. I never wanted my name on a box, but I enjoy helping others. And I always say, check your ego at the door, because if you trust the people that are helping you, listen to them as much as possible. And it's so hard for game designers to do that, because it's their creative baby.
Yeah.
And so good on you for listening. And then my only real question now is, was that model of Machu Picchu in Lego?
I wish it was in Lego. There is actually a designer who's gone and made a little Lego model of Machu Picchu. And originally, when I was coming up with the block idea, I thought Lego would be so cool. Sadly, I didn't reach out to that designer at all. But no, the model I have is a beautiful one made out of some sort of, I think, clay or some sort of modeling process, a hard modeling process. I've completely forgotten the name of clay or some sort, cement, perhaps even. I'm a game designer. I don't know anything about building materials.
So speaking of games more in general, as we kind of get to the softball part of this interview, what games do you like to play yourself? And do you think that any have inspired you as a designer?
So I guess this is a strange question for me. I'm very, very, very new to the wargaming and historical games space. I don't deny that I have not played many myself, and learning about these games through the Zenobia Award and studying like the different judges and the organizers games has been really amazing and insightful for me. I come at it from a much more casual perspective. Like a lot of the board games I play are very sort of, more casual bent ones. But I think that's what's made, I guess, my game quite interesting, because it is a more casual. It's a competitive game, but it's not going to take you 10 hours to play, and it's not got 100 different pieces. And I think bringing some of those more simpler mechanics that have a more social dynamic to them. So for example, one game that I really love playing is Mountains of Madness, which is a casual game, but it has a lot of different social dynamics that influence how you complete different challenges. And that inspired me in aspects as well of, having different sabotage mechanics. I'm also more broadly interested in video games and even sort of social simulation game shows and reality TV. Like I'm a huge Survivor fan, and bringing in some of those ideas of being duplicitous and working and almost riding other people's coattails in their development. And I saw a lot of parallels with the historical scenario of historians riding others' coattails and working off what others have built off, and kind of, someone presenting a lot of evidence and others getting the glory for it. So I've really drawn my inspiration for the game from a lot of different avenues. And I almost feel like not being so focused on a particular genre of what I play and drawing more broadly has created a game that I think is more sort of the mechanics fitting the historical model than necessarily fitting convention.
Fantastic. And would you recommend well, actually, let me rephrase that. So how would you recommend that other people like you who are maybe curious about trying game design hop in?
I think, like, first and foremost, you've got nothing to lose. If it's something you're passionate about, if it's something you enjoy doing, join, give it a try. Like, and never think you're not good enough. Never think that you don't have enough knowledge to start, because you have to start to gain knowledge, right? And so I think in terms of building up that knowledge, contests like the Zenobia Award are brilliant. Yes, we have designers coming in who have published titles, and yes, we have designers who've made lots of different games and have, a strong basis in historical games or a history degree. You don't need any of those to join a contest like this. And there are other contests as well. Like Zenobia Award is not the only game design and board game design contest out there. More broadly, things like game jams, like be that video game jams or board game jams, are incredible opportunities to meet people and learn and to make a game in a very short space of time that lets you gain some confidence and gain some skills and meet people and see if this is something you like doing. And if it is, do another one. And if it is, make a personal project. Like, we're so lucky that we've got so many different tools available to us, like Tabletop Simulator, like Vassal, that we can make games and prototype very quickly, and it look very, very good and play well with people from all over the world. In that sense, we do live in such a wonderful time of knowledge building, of being able to develop oneself without getting a huge game design degree at a university or anything like that, because there's so many resources available to us. So I think just jump in, like, is my advice. I jumped into the Zenobia Award not really knowing what to expect, and I've gotten so much out of it. So I can definitely recommend.
You survived the process.
I did survive the process. And what a process it was.
Yeah. So we know that you guys have been talking to one another.
Yes,
and
we have.
you've heard about all the other games.
Yes.
What games are you? It's a hard question because I know you guys are becoming friends. What games are you excited to play from the other 7?
Oh, like I know it's a real cop out to say all of them, but
that's what everybody's been saying.
I know, but that's because they are also interesting and also different. Like, all coming at it from a very different mechanical perspective. You've got ones like Winter Rabbit that, like, is such a different take on history, in it being more a folklore way of telling history and very, like, simple but elegant game mechanics, compared with the vast scale of a game like Tyranny of Blood, which has a lot of different moving parts but all seem to work together really well. Molly House on top of that, like a truly unique, incredible theme, where for me, the moment that Joseph explained the currency of the game was joy and collective joy, I'm like, wow. Yeah, that's genius. That's so inspiring and clever. Like, I'm personally really interested in sort of period dramas and that British style history. So ones like The Season look incredible to play, and that interesting dynamic between building up the skills of a young lady that she needs to marry versus the practical skills she actually needs in life. Marcel's game, Orange Shall Overcome, like, it looks stunning, and evading, getting caught looks brilliant. I've seen a bit of Damon's game from a few months back, and Liberation Haiti with the 2 different phases just looks so incredible and interesting. And Sheria's game as well, like teaching Indonesian schoolgirls to be more literate, and that process of actually getting them from the schoolyard into the broader community and enhancing, like, on a more national scale. They're all just so incredible. Like, I'm blown away by like so many of them, even some of the non-finalists. Like if anyone hasn't seen the list of the games that got to proposal stage, and then on top of that, the 2 highly commended, they all look amazing.
Yeah.
So I don't have enough hours in the day to play them all because they all look so damn great. They really do.
So I will close by saying yours looks amazing too.
Thank you.
And do you have a social media presence where people can contact you about your work?
I do not. Twitter is a scary space of anger and you know, socially anxious people. I think for me, no for Twitter. So no, I don't. I'm looking at getting a Board Game Geek page for Wiñay Kawsay. In terms of, I think, reaching out for me. At the moment, I'm unknown, so perhaps in the future you might see me on there if I get convinced by someone. But
contact
no,
Liz and
I live it.
We'll
contact Liz and Mitch if you have any questions about the game. I might even add a link to the prototype, perhaps with this podcast in the description, if that's allowed.
Sure.
So you can hop on there, and there's obviously in Steam Workshop you can contact me if you wish. And yeah, otherwise contact Liz and Mitch, and they'll pass something on to me, and I'd love to talk to you. It's just social media is a scary, horrible place. In
Stranger danger.
Indeed.
So if you want to contact Mitch or me, I'm everywhere online as Beyond Solitaire. Mitch can be found as No Dice, No Glory. And we have been so happy to have Alison Collins, designer of Wiñay Kawsay. Happy gaming, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.